You are trying to do so much. The swaddling, the white noise machine, the black and white flashcards, or that specific way of wrapping them that everyone swears by but never quite feels right when you actually do it. And underneath all of it is this quiet question many parents carry. Am I giving them enough? Am I doing the right things? Here is what the science actually says. A baby is born with roughly 100 billion neurons. But most of the connections between those neurons do not exist yet. They are waiting to be built, and what builds them might surprise you. Most of us assume that more is better. More stimulation, more enrichment, more intentional play. That the quality of our parenting is measured by how optimized it is, and feel guilty when we don't meet those expectations. But developmental psychology tells a completely different story about what your baby's brain actually needs from you. The everyday acts that matter most do not require products or specific techniques. Decades of work in infant neuroscience shows that the things already happening in an ordinary day between a parent and a baby are doing something profound. And understanding what they are and why they work changes how you see the moments you might otherwise rush through or second-guess. By the end of this video, you will have a clearer picture of what acts of love your baby actually needs from you. Let's dive in. What holding your baby is actually doing to their brain. Most parents hold their baby because it feels right. Because the baby calms down, because it's warm, because it's what you do. But developmental science has been studying what actually happens inside a baby's body and brain during that contact, and the findings go well beyond comfort. Here's the thing. The research didn't start with healthy full-term babies in loving homes. It started in neonatal units, with premature infants born months too early, in incubators, separated from their parents for medical reasons. And what researchers found was incredible. The babies who were held more didn't just seem calmer or cry less. Their brains looked different. On scans, you could literally see it. The areas responsible for handling stress and forming emotional bonds were more developed in babies who had more skin-to-skin contact. The closeness was physically changing the architecture of the brain. A Stanford medicine study followed 181 premature infants and measured their development at 6 and 12 months. Researchers observed babies do standard tasks, like dropping a cube into a cup and their ability to turn their head to the sound of a bell. The babies who received just 20 extra minutes of skin-to-skin contact per day scored measurably higher on visual, motor, and language skills by their first birthday. Just 20 extra minutes a day of skin-to-skin contact marked the difference between a baby who is ahead and one who is showing early signs of delay. Kangaroo care works because the baby's body reads close physical contact as safety. Cortisol drops, bonding hormones rise, and over time, these experiences help shape the systems involved in emotional regulation and attachment. Holding your baby is not just comfort. It is literally shaping a healthier brain and a more skilled human. But closeness is only part of it, because what happens in the ordinary moments turns out to matter in a way nobody talks about. The power of everyday rituals. Your baby cannot understand a word you say. They have no language, no context, no framework for meaning yet. So when parents talk to their babies, narrate their day, make eye contact during feeds or play peekaboo, it can feel a little pointless. It can feel like performing for an audience that isn't there. But here is the problem with that thought. Even if a baby cannot understand your words, they are not passive. They arrive wired for social engagement, with a built-in drive to attend, explore, and signal back to you. A professor named Edward Tronick spent decades studying exactly these moments. What he found is that babies are not just sitting there waiting to be fed and changed. They are working. From the very first weeks, they are actively trying to figure out how they fit into their world. And they do that entirely through repetition and interaction. Every time you play peekaboo, respond to a sound, or follow a familiar routine, your baby is learning patterns. How you time the game, what your expressions mean, what it feels like when the two of you land in a moment of shared joy. Tronick proposed that both a parent and a baby each carry their own individual sense of meaning about themselves and the world. And when the two of you become genuinely attuned, eye contact held, a babble answered, a back and forth that finds its rhythm. Researchers propose that a shared state briefly emerges between you, one where the infant's sense of self can grow through contact with the adult's more organized experience. When a caregiver responds to a babble or mirrors a smile, they confirm to the infant that their signals have meaning, that they can influence the world around them. Researchers describe this whole process as making meaning together. And through thousands of these small exchanges, that process does something specific. It transforms raw sensory input, a voice, a touch, a familiar face, into a coherent internal map of who the child is and how the world works. So the daily rituals are not decorating the moment, they are building the map your baby will use for the rest of their life. What is good enough? There is a number that came out of decades of research on parent-infant interaction that most people have never heard. And when you hear it, your first instinct will be that something has gone wrong. That the researchers must have been studying struggling families or parents in difficult circumstances. But they weren't. They were studying healthy, loving, attentive parents doing their best. And what they found is that even those parents were only getting it right about 30% of the time. Researchers filmed parent-baby interactions and analyzed them frame by frame. Even the most attuned, responsive, tuned-in pairs spent only about 30% of their time in a genuine state of match, where the parent read the cue correctly, responded in time, and the baby registered it as connection. The other 70% was mismatch, a signal missed, a response that came half a second too late, a look that didn't land. And this was normal, even in healthy, loving families. Mismatches occur every few seconds during active play, even between parents and babies who are doing everything right. Here is what matters most practically. Both extremes produce worse outcomes than the messy middle. A parent who is neglectful, chronically absent, or unresponsive deprives the baby of the security they need to learn that the world is reliable. But a parent who is hypervigilant, who rushes to prevent every mismatch, who never lets a moment of stress occur, removes the very experience the child needs to learn how to recover. Both result in weaker emotional regulation skills. Meeting an infant's needs immediately by roughly 1/3 of the time is sufficient to raise a healthy, securely attached child. That is what good enough parenting actually means. Not careless, not low effort, just human. Now think about this. What if mismatches are not the problem to fix, but actually the point? How to train your baby's resilience. So we know that mismatches are the norm, not the exception. But here is what that actually means for the baby in the moment. Because a mismatch is not nothing. It is not neutral. When a cue is missed, when a parent reaches for a bottle and the baby needed something else entirely, when the timing is just slightly off, when a look doesn't land, the baby's body registers it. These moments are what researchers call microstressors. Cortisol, the stress hormone, rises. A baby cannot talk themselves down from that. They cannot reason their way back to calm. They have no internal tools for that yet. They depend entirely on you to be their external regulator, the person whose presence and response brings their nervous system back to safety. Here's the thing. It's not the mismatch itself that matters. It is what comes after. When a parent notices, adjusts, re-engages, soothes, and the baby moves from stress back to connection, something amazing happens in that transition. This cycle of rupture and then repair is the primary way emotional resilience gets built. Not by avoiding stress, by recovering from it, repeatedly, within a relationship that proves itself reliable every time. Think of it like training for a marathon. A runner does not run the full distance every day, but builds stamina by coping with shorter, manageable distances. Each successful repair expands the baby's capacity, teaching them through thousands of small experiences that obstacles can be overcome, that things can go wrong and still be fixed, that the person they depend on will come back. Every successful repair teaches your baby that you can be counted on. That is the foundation of secure attachment. And that brings us back to where we started. Remember those 100 billion neurons waiting to be connected? The most powerful things shaping those connections are already happening in your ordinary day. The holding, the routines, and the moments when you reconnect after getting it wrong. None of it requires a product. None of it requires perfection. Babies are not waiting for an optimized parent. They are waiting to learn that the world is reliable. You are how they learn that. Send this to the parent in your life who is being too hard on themselves right now. See you in the next one.